Hello guys, welcome back. This is part 12, and this is going to be the last video that I have to do this weird overlay thing. So anyways, when we left off we had the textures in, and this video is going to be pretty fast, so if you had trouble with the last video, you might want to just watch this one all the way through, and then if you want to replicate what I've been doing, if you've been keeping up, then you want to do it after watching it. But if you've been fine so far, you're free to just tag along. So what we're going to be doing today is applying texture to this table, similarly to how we did the room. We're going to have several different shaders. So let's go to the shading tab real quick, and then we're going to focus in on the table by hitting period. And I hit Shift H to hide this. Remember, that's how you hide everything. So we're going to add a new texture by hitting that plus button while on the shader panel, and we're going to name this one table, because this is going to be the granite material. Then we're going to hit plus, and then the other plus on the bottom, and we're going to name this one supports. So this is going to be the wooden legs. And then we're going to want one more, and we're going to name this cabinets. So this is going to be our white material for the cabinets. And the cabinets aren't going to have a texture because they're just going to be white and reflective. So anyways, we're going to get started here by, I think, do we change the cabinet name? No? Maybe? I can't quite remember. Anyways, so we need to select the faces of the table and make sure they have their own material. So with the table material selected, we're going to tab into edit mode, and we're going to go into face select. We're going to click on the table, and we're going to hit Control +++ till we have all the connected faces selected, and we're going to hit assign on the right side. And then, so now the top will be the table with shader, and then we will click on the supports and then hit Control +++ to select all of those. And then we need to make sure that we have the support shader selected, then we'll click assign. And then we're going to do the same thing with the cabinets. We're going to select the faces, Control +++ till we have all of them selected. Then we're going to go to cabinets and click assign. So that was very fast, but it was just a lot of repetitive work. So let's start with the table. We're going to go down to the node editor down here. We're going to click on our node, and we're going to hit Control-Shift-T, and then that'll bring up our material selector, and we're going to select the marble materials. And again, this should be down in the description with a download link of all the textures I used. We're going to hit Setup on the top right, and it should apply all those materials for us. And you can see right off the bat, we can see our texture on the table. How cool is that? I believe we messed with the scale a bit because the UV unwrapping makes the texture kind of small. So we're going to scale this up by 3 on the X, Y, and Z, and just look at that. That looks amazing. And this isn't even with realistic lighting yet, so very cool. So next we're going to move on to the supports. So we have a nice wood texture for this one. So again, we're going to hit Control-Shift-T on our principled shader, and we're going to select the wood textures. We're going to click the button, and boom, there's our wood textures. It's that easy to set this up. And again, you can leave out the displacements if you want, because I'm going to delete them anyways. But yeah, we're going to scale up the X, Y, and Z by 2 to get a bit more detail in there. And last but not least, we need to get the cabinets done. So the cabinets are going to be easy. They're just going to be a white reflective material. We could add roughness if you want to make it look more realistic, but that's going to be a little bit of a hassle for us. So anyways, we're going to select our cabinet material, and all we're going to do is we're going to make sure it's a pure white for the color. By default, it's a slightly grayish color, and you can see we can make it any color we want, but in this case I want to make it white. So I'm going to set it to white by scaling up the RGB. I'm going to push the brightness up all the way, and we're not going to make it metallic, so we're going to leave metallic to 0. You can see there I'm kind of giving you a demo of what it would look like. It's more obvious if you have like a metallic with like a gray color or red or something, but we're going to at 0. What we want to mess with is the roughness. So if it was at 1%, there'd be no reflection. There would be very, very little reflection, I should say. But we want it a bit lower, and you see we don't want it to be 0 because then it'll look like a glass. If you want that, you totally can leave it down there, but I want it a little bit higher, probably like a 0.137. That's what I got it at right now. Maybe a little bit less, a little bit more, I don't know. And again, this is the fake lighting, so if you really wanted to hone it in, you'd switch it to cycles and see what it looks like. We're going to leave that somewhere between like 1 and 0.25, so that looks pretty good. And on the right, you can see there's a preview tab that you can click on in the shader panel, and that will give you a realistic lighting preview, but it does slow your computer down a little bit because it's doing ray tracing. But yeah, you can see the reflections on our object. It's using that 360-degree picture on the bottom right on that metal sphere, showing. So we're also going to save some time on these on the bowl and the bathtub by reusing our cabinet shader, because it's just going to be that white texture. So with the bowl selected, we're going to click on that little sphere, and then we're going to select cabinets. Again, we're going to click on that sphere, and we're going to hit cabinets. So we don't have to hit new texture because we're going to be reusing one. So it's going to make the workflow a lot faster. I believe next we work on the faucets. So let's hide our character by clicking on them and hitting H. Or maybe it was the glass. I believe we work on the glass. Glass next, maybe. So the glass is a little bit different to set up, but it's still a very easy one since we're not going to add roughness to it right away. We might do that in the future. I don't think we do it in this video though. But we do need to make sure it's unwrapped now. Because we deleted the top, bottom, and left faces, we don't need to mark any seams because it'll just kind of unfold it like a book. And you'll see that when I select all the faces by hitting A. I'm going to hit U and click Unwrap, and you can kind of see it just unfolded it very easily. So that's all neat and handy, and we do want to make sure this one's UV unwrapped because, again, we will later on be adding some light smudging to it. So you can see here, we're going to go back to our shader view, and we're going to create a new shader, and we're going to call it Glass. So this is going to be our basic glass shader. And what we're going to do is we're going to come down to transmission, and we're going to set that all the way to 1. And basically that'll make it clear and see-through like glass. And it also does the distortion like a camera, if you had like a lens. And it's hard to see in this view because we don't really have any surrounding objects. So even in realistic shading, it doesn't work until we add stuff to our scene, really. And you can see I just set the roughness down all the way because we want our glass to be see-through and not like foggy. And yeah, that's pretty much it for glass. It's pretty easy to set up in Blender with the principled shader. And we want to make sure it's pure white for now, so it'll be super clear glass. If we make it blacker, it'd be like a tinted glass. But obviously this isn't like a car window or anything like that. So yeah, that looks pretty good. It looks like a mirror right now, but trust me, it's actually just like 100% glass. It's because we're just looking at it through the textured view. So looks pretty good. Anyways, now that that's done, we're now going to move on to the metallic handles for the bathtub and the faucet. So we're going to click on the faucet and the bathtub thing, and we're going to hit Shift H while they're selected to single them out. And we're going to start with this faucet over here. We're going to add a new texture, and we're going to name this one Metal. And with the metal texture, we're going to be able to make it look like metal. So we're going to make it kind of look like that ball in the bottom right hand corner. We're going to click on our texture, and believe it or not, all we have to do is take the metallic slider and set it all the way to 1 by clicking and dragging. And we want it to be a bit more reflective and a bit grayer, so we're going to turn down the gray value, and we're going to turn down the roughness value, and you can see it's starting to look pretty reflective. But I don't want it to be like glass reflective, so I'm going to leave it at about like 2.5, whatever. Or 0.25, I should say. Yep, and that looks pretty good. So in a second here, we're going to tab over to our faucet. Oh, excuse me, I had to sneeze. Anyways, we're going to go over to our faucet, and we're going to click on that little sphere by the shader, and we're going to click on metal. So we just reuse that shader yet again. So everything's looking pretty good so far. We're also going to reuse the cabinet shader for the shower base, but I'm not sure if we do that in this clip. I believe we do, yeah. So selecting our shower base, we're going to tab into edit mode, and I believe we unwrap it real quick. Maybe. Since this is a very basic shape, I'll leave it up to the smart unwrap in this case, and we'll hit OK, and you see it did something. It's not a very good job, but it did do it. And all we have to do at this point is go back to the shading tab, and I'm going to click on that circle again, and I believe we just make it a basic cabinet texture again. And it probably would have been better to call this just like a white glass shader instead of cabinets, because we're using it for more than just the cabinets, but it's not too big of a deal. So yeah, so we have most of the things in our scene textured, besides that like smearingness on the glass I was talking about. But we're gonna try to get a look at what our scene looks like. So we're gonna turn off our human, and we're gonna make sure we click the camera icon so it doesn't show up in the render either. And when I actually render this, we're gonna have some problems with it, but I will fix it later. So we're going to go back to layout view real quick, and I believe we added a camera so we can actually like render an image from a certain perspective. So what we're going to do is hit Shift A, and we're going to go down to camera. You can see it right there, and we're just going to click on it, and you can see now the camera in our scene. So it's that simple. And if we hit 0 on the numpad, it'll put us in the view of the camera, and what is inside the box is what will show up in the render. Everything grayed out will be in the final picture or animation, whatever you do. So it's pretty simple. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit N to bring up this menu, and I'm going to click Lock Camera to View. And what that'll do is when I pan around, you'll see the camera will actually follow. Now if I didn't have this turned on, I'd just get snapped out of the camera view. But in this case, it's a nice way to line up your camera, and when you see when I turn it off, boom, you can tab out and our camera moved. And again, you can open and close that right panel by hitting N on your keyboard. And now I'm going to select the camera by clicking on that outline while looking through it, and you can actually press G to move it around. So there I hit G and locked it on the X-axis, I believe, or the Y, and when you move your mouse it'll rotate it. In this case, or it'll move it, and in this case I hit R to rotate, and then I hit Z to lock it to the Z, and I could kind of pan it, and you can see there I am doing it from outside the camera, so you can also do that. You know, it's just you kind of want it to get to a certain perspective you like. And also keep in mind, I tried to keep it at the human level. That's why I brought the box back. And you can see I'm also showing you how to manually open that one panel. So you can either press N or you can just drag that little plus icon. So yeah, that's looking pretty good. And I believe in a second here I realized that I wasn't recording audio, so I don't do too much else. But we're also going to add in a point light by hitting Shift A, going to light, and selecting, oh no, sorry, a sun. We made a sun. So what this will do is it'll add a point to our scene, and you'll notice there's a line coming out of it, and when you rotate that line, that will be the direction that the sunlight's pointing in. So you can see here I just kind of rotate it to the side by locking it on the Y and then locking it on the Z. And if you kind of get an idea of where the shadows will be based off where the sun's pointing. And I'm going to use this to make a quick test render of our room. You can do this too if you want, but I'm more so doing it to introduce lighting and what we have so far. Obviously it's not going to look good, and we're going to have some problems because our Boolean cuts are still going to render. And in the next video I believe I actually fixed that. But in the meantime, I'm about to introduce some of the like basic rendering features and stuff. But anyways, we're going to go to Edit and Preferences, and I believe here I'm showing you that before you render anything, you want to make sure that you have your graphics card enabled. So you can see there if you go to Cycles Compute Device, you can turn on CUDA if you have a NVIDIA card, and in this case I selected my GTX 1080 and also my CPU, so that's going to make our renders a lot faster. And you can see here you want to also make sure your device is set to CPU compute. So right around here is where I realized my audio cut out, so we're going to be switching to the next clip, and no more overlay audio, so it's going to be great. So I just realized my mic was muted for a while, so we're going to switch back off of over talking the footage. So anyways, we're going to make sure that our GPU is selected by going to GPU compute. And since we're not actually rendering this clip, we don't actually have to change samples or anything. We'll talk about that later. But for right now, if I enable rendering, it might lag a little bit, but we can kind of get an idea for what our scene is going to look like. Oh, I know what's wrong. So we need to turn off displacements because it's kind of messing with our textures a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to shading. I'm just going to kind of go through all my textures real quick and get rid of that displacement because it kind of breaks things. So not many of these things actually added displacements, so that shouldn't be too big of a deal. If the displacements were set up properly, this wouldn't be a problem, but it's not really necessary for our scene. So, and while we're here, we can actually apply a metal texture to this faucet right here as well. So I'm going to click on metal. There we go. So going back to what I was saying, so now we can actually finally get a look at what our render is going to look like. So I'm going to go back to layout. So this is our scene right here. So I'm going to make sure sun's collected because we're going to want to tweak how bright the sun is. So with it rendered, we're going to kind of chug along here. So I'm not sure if it's actually hiding the window right there. So we're just gonna hit, we're gonna just hide this from view real quick. Same thing with that and that and that. So let's see here. Okay, so you can see here's the light coming in. It's kind of lagging me down a bit, so I'm gonna switch over to a GPU or a CPU compute because I'm trying to record a video. So as you can see, as it loads in, and you can kind of see all those textures that we added in. So it might be best to actually let this thing pump it out. So I'm going to take this human guy, I'm going to hide him, and I'm going to actually increase the sun. So with the sun selected, we're going to go down to this little sun icon, and we're going to bump the strength up to 7.9 should be good. We'll go up to 15. So we're going to have a really bright sun showing in. And if we go around back, we're going to hide this thing real quick. And now I'm going to go to the render tab, and I'm just going to kind of show you what this looks like. So I'm going to take render, I'm going to pump it up a bit, and I'll be right back after this renders an image so I can kind of show you what we have so far. Okay, so you can kind of see that although our scene is very noisy because it was a quick render, you can kind of see it all coming together. So you can see the really nice reflection on the floor because it's very glossy. You can see the reflection of the tub and the cabinets, and you can see the glass. Although we will have to tweak the glass because you can see some like shading artifacts from it. But you can see the reflection of the cabinet in the glass. We are missing the wall right now because there's some weird bug going on that I'll have to fix. But yeah, as a whole, you can kind of see it coming together. We just have to hide some objects that are being a bit unfriendly to the scene, and we can also add more realistic lighting in when we're getting closer to the final product with a 360-degree picture. So yeah, so it looks like it's really coming along. So that's it for me today. I'm going to have to go back and dub over some of those clips from before because for some reason my microphone was muted. So thanks for watching, and please leave a comment if you have anything you'd like to comment, any positives or negatives. So thanks for watching.